Hello, I'm Impact Weather Meteorologist Chris Hebert with an update on the tropics. Today we're going to focus on two disturbances out there. Disturbance number 27, the 27th disturbance of the 2011 hurricane season, and also disturbance number 31 over by Africa. We're not concerned about GERT over here northeast of Bermuda. It should be dissipating over the next 12 hours. First of all, let's take a look in the eastern Caribbean Sea at disturbance 27. Now, thunderstorm activity has increased since the last 6 hours. We have heavy thunderstorms mainly south of Puerto Rico and south of the U.S. Virgin Islands here. It's moving westward, slowly getting a little better organized. We don't see much rotation yet, but I don't think that's not too far off. In the next day or two, we should begin seeing some rotation. I think it has a good chance of developing into a tropical storm by the time it reaches the Caribbean Sea. Now, where is it going to go? Well, if we look at the flow pattern here, this is the flow pattern right now, and I think this is going to persist for the next week. We have high pressure sitting over Texas. That's the reason for the heat and the dry air over Texas. Generally low pressure along the east coast and high pressure over north of the Leeward Islands. What I think it's going to do is direct that storm just due westward, right toward Belize, eventually across the southern Bay of Campeche and into Mexico. This is disturbance number 27. This is our forecast track here, passing across the central Caribbean Sea. By Friday, just off the coast of Honduras, could be a tropical storm then tracking into Belize on Saturday and crossing the Yucatan Peninsula Saturday night, early Sunday, emerging into the southern Bay of Campeche on Sunday. Could regain tropical storm strength before it moves inland into southern Mexico, but I don't see any threat to the central or northwestern Gulf Coast from this system because we have had high pressure stationary over Texas for the next week or so. Looking out toward the east, in the eastern Atlantic, we have disturbance number 31. Doesn't look very organized right now, and it isn't. Just a few thunderstorms, no spiral banding. We have some dry air that's come off the coast of Africa, and that dry air is mixing in, so we don't expect this thing to do anything for the next 4 or 5 days until maybe when it reaches the eastern Caribbean Sea on about late Sunday or Monday. Let's take a look at some of the model guidance and what they're forecasting. First of all, let's look at yesterday's model run from 7 o'clock Monday morning. The American model was forecasting that disturbance by Africa to track across the northeast Caribbean and generally track westward through the Caribbean, entering the straits here between the Yucatan Peninsula and Cuba about on Saturday the 27th of August as a hurricane. And beyond that, it actually drove it inland into central Louisiana on the 29th of August as a fairly large and powerful hurricane. But this far out, you can't really trust the models that much. They don't really have a good feel for what's going to be happening out in advance of the storm that could be steering it. If you look at the model run just 12 hours later, last evening, 7 p.m. Monday, valid for the same time period. Instead of being over here by the Yucatan Peninsula, it's over in the Florida Keys, heading right up the Florida Peninsula into the southeastern U.S. And just 6 hours after that, the same American model forecasting it to track across the Florida Keys on Saturday the 27th and generally head toward about the Mississippi or Alabama coastline. Well, I think that the GFS, the American model, is seeing the same kind of a pattern in each run. Basically, high pressure staying over Texas, low pressure along the East Coast. It just doesn't have the placement of that low pressure area just right on each run. That's why we're seeing a lot of variance in where it's forecasting it to be. We can take a look at the European model, which has been in good agreement, at least with itself, over the last couple of days. And it doesn't go out quite as far as the American model. It drives the disturbance across the northeast Caribbean early next week and then into the eastern Bahamas on Thursday, the 26th of August, generally indicating a track up toward the Carolinas eventually by the 28th of August rather than into the Gulf of Mexico. It sees that high pressure over Texas being a little bit stronger over the coming week. And remember, this is the current pattern right now. High pressure over Texas, low pressure along the east U.S. coast and through Florida. That's where the systems would tend to want to track, right up into the low pressure area. They won't come toward this high pressure center. If we look a week from today, that high pressure center is forecast to be still over Texas. We still have low pressure along the east coast, and that's why the European model is driving the system up toward the east coast, the southeast U.S. coast. And the American model indicates the high might be just a little bit weaker, might allow it to slip into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. I don't really think it's going to come as far west as Louisiana should it develop. I think that high pressure is going to hold for at least another 10 days or so. There are some signs that beyond that time, though, toward the end of the month, that high pressure will begin to weaken. This low pressure area will slip a little westward, and we might even get a little rain down on the Gulf Coast. Unfortunately, that means that is when the northwestern Gulf and central Gulf Coast will be open up for potential hurricane impacts as we move into September. That's a look at the tropics for today. I'm Impact Weather Meteorologist Chris Hebert. Thanks for viewing.